All right, I think we should be live. I hope all the mics and cams are working on. But yeah, we're live. We're on YouTube, and I am ready to break down Week 15. Jacob, how you feeling?
I'm good. Regular day at the office. In the NFL, the Patriots fall out of playoff contention, and the Jets won. So it seems like a normal
Yeah,
day.
another completely inconsistent week of football this year, which like you said is pretty dead on for what the season has been. Yeah, so we are recording this right now as the Cleveland and New York Giants game has just started. Let's hope the Giants actually pull off the dub. I'd love to see Jacob's team get a dub today. But
Not happening. We're playing our second team.
fair, yeah,
We're playing our B team.
yes. So probably not likely, but let's talk about obviously probably the biggest game of the week, and that is the Saints and the Chiefs. Absolutely insane game in this one. Not just because it's my team, but absolutely insane game. I was hoping the game was going to be a little bit better, to be honest, but it was definitely eventful. I actually saw something. I saw a stat that today I'm not sure if it was the record, but there was four safeties today. I don't think I've ever heard of that happening. But there's another safety today off a punt return, of all things. So absolutely madness game here. But the Chiefs get the W. They move on to 13-1. Drew Brees in this game, awful, absolutely terrible. I think honestly he had a completion percentage under 50. I think it was even under 40 at one point. So
It was under 50 at the very least. He completed 15 of 34 for 234 passing yards, three touchdowns, and a pick.
right,
Um, you know, I would I say it was an awful game? Not really. I mean, the numbers don't reflect that outside of the completion percentage, but you have to consider the fact that he is coming off of a month off where he had a punctured lung and several fractured ribs. Um, I'm taking this game for the Saints with a little bit of a grain of salt, but would I go as far as to say it was an awful game by Drew Brees? No, I wouldn't say that. But he is coming off of an injury, and he looked fine. I mean, he did what he needed to do against a very good Chiefs team. Held them pretty much even. Didn't let them sort of run away with it, even though at times they probably should have. It was very back and forth between the two teams. They were scoring back and forth, and at points the Chiefs probably should have ran away with it, and the Saints defense just wouldn't let them. And Drew Brees hung around. Unfortunately, they lost, which is just going to hurt them, sort of securing that number one seed in the NFC. And they had a chance to clinch the division this week if they won. Are they going to clinch the division? I think so. I think the NFC South is theirs to lose. Um, but a little, just a bump in the road, I think, for New Orleans.
so yeah, I can see that take. I'm literally like 45 minutes fresh off the end of this game. So all the game is just kind of right in the front of my mind. I'm gonna disagree with you here. Drew Brees had a terrible game. Yes, the Chiefs secondary actually had a fairly decent game. But the Chiefs did classic, just let the teams back in at the very last moment and make it look really close. Even though the game actually wasn't as close as the score shows, but I can see your take because you obviously Drew Brees coming off of those ridiculous rib injuries and collapsed lung. Obviously, he probably was going to play well, but it's the end of the season, and ultimately it was his decision whether or not he was healthy or not. And from what he said and how he practiced, it appears that he was fine. I'm like going into this game, most people thought yeah, he's pretty much fine. He's probably not 100%, but he's probably close to it. I mean, like that was my perspective going into this game, and he was nowhere near close to 100%. He looks slow. I mean, he's 41, so he always looks slow, but just not the Drew Brees that I am constantly reminded of how great he is. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna say he had a bad game, and the Chiefs defense even though they allowed 29 points, was pretty solid to be honest. I think they made some really good plays. They dropped like 4 interceptions, which would have made the game a lot not even as close as it was. So overall, not a great game for the Saints. They were without Michael Thomas, but I don't want to hear anyone say who watched this game or even follow the game say they lost because of Michael Thomas wasn't there. That's not even close to what happened. But the biggest takeaway though is it's so sad. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the injury hasn't come out officially, but I'll be generally shocked if he's not out for the rest of the season. He might have torn an ACL. It looks really bad, Jacob.
Was it contact? I didn't.
he
All I watched of that game was the last 2 minutes.
it was
and even that was super uneventful.
it was kind of hard to see. He was in a pile, and he gets landed. I only saw it like twice. He gets landed on by a D lineman, and he like his legs like did the splits, and like something popped. Like you could see something popped.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can try and find it.
And as he was exiting the field, he couldn't put any weight on the leg. I thought I thought they should have brought out the cart because he was barely, but he's one of the toughest guys I've ever seen. So actually not that surprising that the
Yeah,
cart
I found it. I'm watching it now.
So
So he comes in. Ooh, yeah, you can see him arc back right there.
it looks really bad. I'll genuinely be shocked.
Yeah, right away they're calling for.
Yeah,
medical.
I'll genuinely be shocked if he plays again this season. But even more of a reason to applaud the Chiefs for signing Le'Veon Bell because he was absolutely awesome in this game. The stats might not show that he had a great game, but he had some phenomenal runs. He looked like the old Le'Veon Bell at some points during this game, and catching passes out of the backfield. I mean, and literally on like one of the last plays of the game, Le'Veon Bell got the game-winning first down and appeared to get hurt as well. And I literally was about to cry. He looked really hurt, but he actually got up and he was fine.
Well, he went down awkwardly because he got hit with a face mask.
Yeah, and then he landed.
But he got.
Yeah, and then he landed.
Yeah, and then he did land awkwardly. Yeah, this is true, but it didn't look as serious as the Clyde injury, which I just saw a better angle of, and I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, as Jacob, I think your camera's frozen, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm moving my head around.
Yeah, you're not moving. So I'll let you.
I'm not moving.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you could just figure that out, it'd be great. But so back to the point. Chiefs get the dub. It was definitely a closer game than the score realized. Okay, here.
Did that work? I turned it off and on again.
Yeah, it's back. I just gotta get it back in the frame. Here. Tell me what your biggest takeaways from the game were.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this game purely on numbers, I mean, it looked like both. Obviously, you're going to disagree with me when I say that both quarterbacks had a pretty good game. Each one of them threw for 3 touchdowns, but I think the biggest takeaway was that New Orleans was just trying to survive against Kansas City, because I think Sean Payton knew that if he trotted out Taysom Hill to start this game, they were going to lose. I think he had his doubts in Taysom Hill, even though as much as he likes him, as the starting guy the last 4 weeks, I mean, he picked him over Jameis Winston. But I think he went to Breeze and he said, look, 0 to 100, what percentage are you? Like, how good do you feel? And, Breeze probably said, 70, 80, 85. And Sean said, all right, that's good enough. We're going to trot you out. You're going to do what you can. If we lose, that's okay, because we've got Minnesota and Carolina the next 2 weeks, and we're going to win the division with them. So I don't know if Saints fans should be super devastated that they lost this game. I think they were in a lose-lose situation with either starting Taysom Hill or a broken Drew Brees. So you take the next week to heal up Drew and, hopefully clinch the division out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm sorry. Your camera's working, but I'm obviously not a professional with the streaming stuff. It's very fun. The way I've made it shaped into your thing, it's very fun. It's very comically zoomed in on your face. I don't know why it's doing that.
You can just say that you're laughing at me.
I am
I
laughing
won't
at
feel
you.
bad.
It's pretty funny.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I guess to sum up, biggest takeaway is, if you're a Saints fan, don't be super upset that you lost, because obviously you've got Minnesota and Carolina, and you win one of those at the very least. Hopefully you win both. Obviously, best case scenario. But excuse me, Drew Brees gets healed up over the course of the next week, and like if you trot out Taysom Hill to start this game, you lose this game. He gets outmatched by Patrick Mahomes in every aspect of his game, and Drew Brees at least puts up a fight while you guys go down. So I wouldn't be super devastated um, with a loss at the hands of a 75% Drew Brees that still threw 3 touchdowns. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you think about. Obviously, you think that he had a not so good game, but
Yeah, so I finally got your camera fixed, by the way, so I can finally resume. Yeah, Drew Brees. No one's gonna convince me that he didn't have a bad game. He had a bad game. His arm is shot. That was the thing that most surprised me. I would imagine that it probably has something to do with his ribs, but we saw this actually last season that he went out early. Teddy Bridgewater came in, and then once Drew Brees got fully back to his form, his arm was pretty fresh heading into the postseason, and I thought that was kind of what was going to happen again this year. And so far, that's not looking like the case. So hopefully Drew Brees can, I I don't know. He looked bad, man. He does not look 100%. And without Michael Thomas in that offense, we saw this earlier in the year as well. Like the Saints offense without Michael Thomas, it's not that great. Like they're not explosive. They rely heavily on Alvin Kamara, and for some reason the Chiefs did a pretty decent job at handling Alvin Kamara today, even though the run defense sucks. And the Saints offense was stymied throughout most of the match. I know they got 29 points, but one of those drives was in garbage time, really. One of them was from an idiotic Demarcus Robinson play, which ultimately got a safety. They had one like really long ball that kind of helped them, but no, the Saints offense in general did not like it. Did not it? I don't know. I don't like it.
yeah, no, and I'm gonna piggyback off of what you're saying and say that it's weird that they're putting, it seems like, less and less faith into Emmanuel Sanders, the guy that they picked up this offseason. They signed Sanders to be a number 2 wideout next to Michael Thomas, and then Michael Thomas goes down and he puts up 4 catches for 76 yards on 5 targets, so only 1 drop, but he was only targeted 5 times. Kamara was targeted more times in the air than he was. So it's weird to see them going to Emmanuel Sanders less and less, despite signing him to be a second option for Brees to go to. And that's just weird to me, I feel like.
No, I totally agree. And honestly, I don't think I saw Emmanuel Sanders get 1 catch today. Like, I honestly forgot he was on the field. Maybe he had 1 or 2, but Emmanuel Sanders did nothing.
He had 4 catches on 5 targets,
okay.
And he had 76 yards. He led in receiving, but he only had 4 catches on 5 targets.
I honestly don't remember any one of those catches, to be honest. Like, I'm not even joking.
Right, and that's another point. He's just sort of going through the motions, and that I don't think that's what they signed him to do.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Also, yeah. So overall, I think the Saints are going to be fine. I don't. Pretty much this loss guarantees that they're not going to be the number 1 seed, which really hurts their shot because most likely we'll see the Saints, well, barring some insane Saints playoff magic or something like that. Saints probably most likely travel to Lambeau to face Green Bay in the NFC Championship game, and that is not a recipe for success if you're a Saints fan, and you know that for sure. Going back to kind of focusing on Kansas City, though, their offensive line, man, is so banged up, and it's honestly ridiculous because like people have been not really, but like they've been a little bit harsh on Mahomes the past few games because they haven't, blown the teams out, which whatever. But Mahomes has not had his all-pro right tackle for nearly the entire season. And this week, he was relying on his guard to play right tackle the entire game, handling Cameron Jordan, of all people. And then they brought up a practice squad player to play right guard. And then their left tackle, Eric Fisher, who's been pretty good this year, was dealing with back problems all week and looked terrible today. He was pressured so much today, and to be able to do what he did, unbelievable. Like if you don't think Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, something's wrong with you. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and it's hard to put a weakness on this Chiefs team. But if you had to do it, number one would probably be the O-line, especially this year without Mitchell Schwartz. Number two, arguably, would be the D-line, but maybe you see it somewhere else. You're the fan. I don't know. But O-line is definitely their biggest concern, especially this year without Mitchell Schwartz. And they've been sort of assembling their own group and seeing what fits best. Obviously, it doesn't matter if Mahomes is going to rush for 20 yards every play anyways.
Right.
But, I mean, you still need an O-line to protect the guy that you paid yacht loads of cash to play football.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The old line has been kind of up and down this year. They've made some questionable calls on who they've had as their starter for the long term in a couple spots. And we've had injuries, like we lost Kelechi Osemele early in the season. He was the left guard, and obviously we lost Mitchell Schwartz, who was the right tackle. We had the right guard Laurent Duvernay-Tardif opt out to be a doctor, so that wasn't helping. And then the center was already pretty bad, and then Eric Fisher's kind of been up and down his whole career, so it hasn't been great. The D line for a while was really pissing me off. They were getting pressure, but they were not finishing, which was just even more annoying in a sense. Kind of the same today. There's definitely some pressure, but they just weren't really finishing. But I will give a little bit of a pass because the Saints offensive line is very good. The Saints offensive line is probably one of the best in the league, to be honest. And I think they did a pretty good job in the run. So I'm not too mad at the D line today. The biggest thing, if I'm in terms of like takeaways for the game, is probably Clyde getting hurt. Like the secondary was okay, the D line was fine, the passing game was pretty good, they were running football pretty good, but like, man, Clyde, it's just killer, man. Like the team was pretty much solid and like pretty sturdy, and then just losing, like, it just sucks. Really sucks.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to complain when you win against a team that's trying to be the NFC's top seed, when you already know that you're probably going to be the AFC's top seed. So, I mean, props to where they're due. Who are your last two matchups?
We play Atlanta next week.
Atlanta, Los Angeles.
Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna go 15-1.
Unless we bench everyone during the Chargers game and we lose that one. But we're almost guaranteed. Knock on wood, we're almost guaranteed the number 1 seed, which is nice. Yeah. So there's not too much to complain about, really. It's just more. There's just more stuff kind of worry about more than to complain about. If that makes any sense. By the way, I discussed a lot of these topics. Actually, in my last episode when I interviewed Tucker Franklin, host of Ref and the Kicker and Chiefs media person. So be sure to check that out on HQI Sports, the podcast, available on all platforms. Just trying to get a plug in there. But yeah, so I'm happy for the win. I'm just kind of worried going to the future, which is kind of insulting to say you're worried when your team is 13-1, but you gotta find some areas to improve on. My last question to you, Jacob, about this game though is, if you had to pick one team in the AFC to contend against the Chiefs heading into the Super Bowl, who would it be?
God, we talked about this a little bit last week. I remember I asked you. And you said Pittsburgh, and now you're asking me, and I'm gonna give you sort of the same answer. I'm gonna say Pittsburgh, just because I think, obviously, I'm biting my own tongue when I say that their defense is top five. Obviously, they've lost their last two against football team and Buffalo. Um, so, do I still think their defense is elite? Yeah, I still think they have a top five defense despite um, losing their last two games. But I'm going to give you another team that might shock you a little bit, but maybe not, considering they sort of gave you a run for your money last year in the playoffs. Tennessee.
So your answer, wait, so you said Tennessee and who?
Tennessee and Pittsburgh,
Oh, okay.
I think have the best shot at dethroning the
See,
Chiefs
see
this year.
that kind of surprised me. Uh, I can kind of see why you said Pittsburgh, even though they've looked really, really poor the last few weeks. I was surprised that you definitely did not say Buffalo because that'd be my one team in my mind. Even though we did beat Buffalo earlier in the year, uh, Tennessee is really hard for me. I think people get really caught up in these kind of blowout victories they have because they're usually against really bad teams. Like they blew out Jacksonville and then they blew out Detroit today. So it's just like, like those two teams are irrelevant to me. Like I don't care. And not enough people talk about this. The Tennessee Titans defense is atrocious. They're
Yeah,
so
it's
bad.
not no. And I'm saying like that's not a good defense. I mean, they picked up Jadeveon Clowney, and he was supposed to be their anchor, and he has been
They got
invisible
rid of
the
him. They
entire
got rid of
season.
him.
Yeah, I mean he was invisible
Well,
for a long,
here's
long
my point.
time this season.
Yeah, and here's my point to that. Like we saw today with the Saints, they have a very good defense. I wouldn't say they have a pretty good defense. They have good pass rushers, and their whole thing was they rushed 4 or 3, usually 4, and then drop back 7. That's the tactic, right? The Tennessee Titans might have the worst combination of pass rushers in the entire league. So
Hmm.
basically, you're relying on a defense that can't get to the quarterback to stop Patrick Mahomes. Like, there's no shot. There's literally no shot.
Yeah,
So,
I mean the counter to that, I guess, is that they have two very solid safeties in Kevin Byard and Kenny
yeah, it
Vaccaro.
don't matter when you got Tyreek
Um,
Hill, though.
right. I mean, yeah, and the flip side of that is two safeties, especially, are not your entire defense, and they shouldn't act as your entire
Right.
defense. I only say Tennessee because I think their offense is very good, and I think it's one of the only offenses that could stand toe to toe with Kansas City's and quietly give them a run for their money.
Okay, so I can see that. The final counter to this kind of conversation. Tell me how the Tennessee Titans offense is different from their team last year.
No, it's not, and I'm
Okay,
saying
then we
that
beat them last year. Like
knowing, and I'm saying that knowing that the Chiefs beat them in the playoffs last year. I'm fully aware that this is the same team that blew by Baltimore, and I guess, did they meet you guys, or did they make it to the conference
no,
final?
no,
No, they didn't make it
we
to the
beat them
conference game.
in the AOC championship last year.
Who else did they beat?
They beat
Who
Baltimore.
am I
They beat
missing?
Baltimore.
No, but they played wild card weekend for sure.
Oh yeah. They beat wait. It was Buffalo and Houston, and then they beat yeah, they played Baltimore. Wait, no. Oh god, you stumped me. Who did they play? Oh, they beat New England.
You
They
have
beat New
until I'm
England.
done
They beat
looking it
New
up.
England. They beat the page.
Oh yeah,
They beat
you're right.
That's when Tom Brady threw the pick six
Yeah,
to
you're
end
right.
his
You're right. You're
career
right.
at Foxborough.
Right. That's right. That's right. No, you're right. You're right. You're
Oh
right.
God,
So yeah, this is. I mean, this is
that
this
was
is the same
amazing.
team that ended Baltimore and New England's playoff run last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, gave Kansas City a bit of a run for their money, even though Kansas City
Eh,
was expected by a lot of people to win
It
this
was
game,
close in the first
or
half.
win
It
that
was
game, I
close
should
in the
say.
first half. In the second half, it really wasn't competition. I think we held Derrick Henry in the second half of that game to like less than 20 yards, like something ridiculous.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So yeah, not so either way. I'm not saying the Chiefs are unbeatable. That's not what I'm saying at all. I know some people might think that, but they really aren't. But they are obviously the best team in the AFC and probably in the entire league. And if I had to pick one team, I know we already beat them, but Buffalo, even though Buffalo has some flaws, Josh Allen, my man, he probably scares me than any other quarterback besides Mahomes in the AFC. Like, and that might sound a little bit crazy because they have Lamar Jackson, but the Chiefs have handled Lamar Jackson every single time we faced them so far. So, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. If there's one team that I had to bet on to dethrone the Chiefs this year, it is the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's a little scary considering where Buffalo was a couple years ago. And they did just clinch the division, so good on Buffalo. For the first time in
Forever.
when did they last win the division?
Who? Probably yeah,
95?
probably
25
yeah,
years?
probably their Super Bowl runs in the 90s, something like that.
Yeah, I think they last won it in 95. So it's been 25 years since they won the division. So obviously good on them. And Josh Allen deserves to be in the MVP conversation, even if he's not going to win it.
Right.
And I don't think he does. I think Mahomes wins it, but Josh Allen deserves to be in that conversation. And not to mean to shift gears a little bit, but he looked good against Denver this week.
Yeah, they absolutely steamrolled Denver this week, even though Denver not that great of a team, but any win's a win in the NFL. And that is going to wrap up our conversation about the Chiefs and Bills. And just a quick update on the Sunday night game. Your Giants have taken a magnificent 3-0 lead over Cleveland, even though I think Cleveland is in the red zone right now.
Cleveland is at the 5-yard line. Don't get excited.
All right. But yeah, let's move on to the Minute of Mania. This is the portion of the recap episode where we break down every single other NFL game in just 1 minute because me and Jacob believe that these games are talked about way too much, especially now since most of these teams are irrelevant since it's almost postseason time. So we just talk about 1 minute, give our thoughts and opinions, and then we move right on. So I have a timer right here. Are you ready, Jacob?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Alrighty. So let me just get the timer set. If I could.
Hopefully Cleveland doesn't score.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay. In 3.
We're just gonna let Baker run right.
Let me do the timer, man. Come on.
I'm sorry. I'm watching the game. Go.
Okay. All right. In 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Okay. First game we're going to talk about is the Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. This is actually a game that I literally watched the entire game. Tom Brady, awful in the first half, and just the whole Buccaneers team in general. But they make yet again, Tom Brady makes another comeback against the Atlanta Falcons, and then they win the game 31-27. Your thoughts, Jacob?
I'm not impressed at all with the Buccaneers because this should have been a blowout. And their offense was completely flat. They let Matt Ryan get going. And the Falcons at one point had a 24-7 lead. I'm not impressed at all with the Bucs offense. Do I think they're a good team? Yeah. But this was a disappointing game.
Very much so.
From my perspective, watching this game. And especially being from New England, where all I hear about is Tom Brady and how good he is. He threw for nearly 400 yards. Yeah, sure. He did most of that in the second half. Even more impressive, but he should have done a lot more in the first half, and he just didn't. He just chose not to.
Yeah. So yeah, don't have anything else to say about that. Right, just over a minute on that one. Next game I want to talk about is the 49ers and the Cowboys. 49ers again, kind of very uneven and inconsistent with Nick Mullins at quarterback, and somehow they allow the Cowboys to score 41 points. Unacceptable. This game doesn't really matter, but I just want to talk about it really quick.
Yeah. Tony Pollard showing out with 2 touchdowns with Ezekiel Elliott out with injury um, begs the question, especially with a struggling Ezekiel Elliott, if Tony Pollard should be the guy more and more often. Andy Dalton had a good game, 200 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Nick Mullins had an okay game, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. Um, Sort of a flat game for the Niners, sort of allowing the Cowboys to pull within the same record as them now. Both teams are 5-9.
Yeah, nothing really much to talk about. I think people are giving Ezekiel Elliott a little bit too much hate, even though Tony Pollard I think is very good. Next game I want to talk about is the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts move on to 10-4, whereas the Texans move on to 4-10. Crazy play at the end of this game with I forgot who caught the ball, but right at like the literally the goal line, and it gets punched out by Darius Leonard, and the Colts go on to win this game and take a firm lead in the AFC South.
Another phenomenal game by Deshaun Watson gets overshadowed by an L in the column in Houston. 373 passing yards for 2 touchdowns. No, that is not a typo. Um, Phillip Rivers had a good game. He threw 2 touchdowns to Zach Pascal. Jonathan Taylor had a good game on the ground, 83 rushing yards for 1 touchdown. This was another phenomenal game by Deshaun Watson, and once again proves why he's maybe a top 5 quarterback in this league. But he is being wasted in Houston right now, and he needs to either get out of Houston or get a team around him.
Literally couldn't agree more. Even though I'm very happy that he got the money that he did, I really don't want to see his career wasted in Houston with this terrible environment. Another game I want to talk about is the Patriots and the Dolphins. Cam Newton, again, did not look very good at all, even though he literally has no weapons around him. There were a couple crazy plays in this game, with like a fumble with Cam Newton as well. But Tua at the end comes up big, has a rushing touchdown, and Miami looks very good and very promising for the future.
Um, Being from New England, I love laughing at Patriots fans.
Me too.
And this week is no different. Because now the my team is still playing meaningful football. Let that sink in for a second. That the Giants are playing meaningful football and not the Patriots. As this loss officially knocked them out of playoff contention, they are eliminated from the playoffs. Cam Newton looked bad. Yeah, I
nothing
mean,
really here.
all of their points came from Nick Folk's leg. And whenever that happens, it's a bad day for Cam Newton.
Right, yeah, not a happy day for Patriots fans. Even I literally couldn't care less. Let's move on to the Chicago and the Vikings. Another game where the Chicago Bears offense actually looked half decent, but not really on the arm of Mitchell Trubisky. Actually, on the legs of David Montgomery. He has almost 150 yards rushing and two touchdowns. And Vikings just come up short in this one.
Yeah, I'm getting distracted. Sorry. Kirk Cousins had a pretty good game. 271 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Mitch Trubisky looked okay himself. 200 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. David Montgomery stole the show, and arguably looked like the better running back, even with Dalvin Cook on the field. 146 yards rushing for 2 touchdowns compared to Dalvin Cook's 132 yards rushing for 1 touchdown. The Bears sneak away with a victory, and the Vikings with just more and more disappointment as the season goes on. They've had flashes, but this has not been a good season for them as a whole.
Yeah, not really a good season for both teams, to be honest. I really hope the Bears don't move on from Matt Nagy just yet. I'm a big fan of him, obviously, since he was the former offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. I really just think they've really struggled at quarterback, to be honest. So I really hope the Bears don't move on completely from their organization structure. I want to move on to Baltimore and Jacksonville. Kind of a throwaway game, but Baltimore need to get the win, and they do. They absolutely destroyed Jacksonville. Lamar probably has one of his better days here. J.K. Dobbins, again, showing why he is definitely one of the better young running backs in the league, and overall just typical Jacksonville trying to tank for whatever best draft pick that they can get.
Yeah, Baltimore spoils the return of Minshew Mania. He looked okay, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns passing for Gardner Minshew. But Lamar Jackson doing his thing. 243 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he had another 35 yards on the ground. This was a clinic by Baltimore and more of a tune-up game than anything, to get them ready for a a playoff hunt that they might not even be in. I mean, like you said, this was a crucial game for them to win, and they did. And Jacksonville with events that also happened this week, which I don't know if we're going to get to the Jets game. But Jacksonville now sits with the first overall pick, and they are sitting pretty ready to get Trevor Lawrence.
They do not move on to get the first overall pick. They actually don't. It is still New York.
Is it still the
Jets? It is still the Jets. Just want to make that.
I've been reading everywhere that the Jets are in the number 2 spot now.
Really?
So maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
yeah, I've been reading that everywhere because they've got the same record. So I don't know how they're going to do tiebreakers.
Here's how I think it would go. The one win for Jacksonville was against Indianapolis in Week 1, which is a divisional win, whereas the one win for the Jets, which we'll get into in just a second, was against the Rams, which is not even the same conference. So that's why I think
maybe I'm not sure how they do tiebreakers with teams that didn't face each other, but I've been reading everywhere that the Jaguars now have the number 1 overall pick.
So I'm almost 100% sure that the Jets still have the number 1 overall pick. So hopefully I'm not wrong. Hopefully, yeah, I'm not sure, but I would say I would bet the Jets still have the number 1 overall pick. Going on to the next game though, I want to talk about is that Jets and Rams game. Finally, the Jets win a game in the NFL, and also at the same time proves my point against why the Rams should never have, or why the Rams should not have paid Jared Goff that humongous contract.
Yeah, I am speechless because of all the teams that I expected the Jets to win. The Rams were certainly not one of them, and I know that I said last week or 2 weeks ago that the Rams could have been the team to beat in the NFC. And I bit my tongue hard on that statement, especially, coming off of a loss to the Jets. I think the Rams will be okay. Obviously, it's not a game that you wanted to lose, with Seattle and Arizona coming up, 2 huge divisional matchups with massive implications. As for the Jets, I mean, you won. Good job.
It doesn't even matter. Cool, you won a game. Does it help you get Trevor Lawrence? No, so it doesn't matter.
Good job. You've got Cleveland and New England in the next 2 weeks.
Exactly. Last game I want to talk about is the Seahawks and the Washington football team. Washington unfortunately has to start Dwayne Haskins in this matchup. Because otherwise, if they had Alex Smith, there's no reason to tell me that Washington doesn't win this game against Seattle. A very close game coming to the end with Dwayne Haskins as the quarterback, and I think this game probably raises even more questions about Seattle as a whole.
Washington right now has a very weird situation at quarterback because obviously Smith has been their guy for a little bit with Kyle Allen being hurt. But before he got hurt, Kyle Allen was the guy. He got started over Dwayne Haskins, who started the season originally. And now Dwayne Haskins comes back and throws for 300 passing yards. So similar to what Jacksonville has with Mike Glennon, Gardner Minshew, and Jake Luton. But obviously they're going to get either Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, so all of their problems will be gone by the end of this season and into the offseason. But with Washington, there isn't really a quarterback that'll be available for them to pick, especially if they win the division. Because if they win the division, they're going to skyrocket up a bunch more picks, and there definitely won't be any quarterbacks available. So it'll be really weird to see what happens this offseason. I will be invested, obviously, because that's interdivision. But, we'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, I agree. I think the NFC East in the upcoming years is going to get very interesting. Not to say that's going to get, really good. I don't think it's going to be like that. But there's a lot of different, there's lots of stuff happening. You have Washington, who over the past like 5 weeks has looked like a real team. And I think what they need to do in the future is to kind of follow the same formula, but just get a little bit more like skill players and kind of like more, just players that have like lots of talent, if that makes any sense. And then for the Eagles, you have obviously the crazy quarterback situation. You have Jalen Hurts, who has been balling, and then you have Carson Winston, who apparently is not accepting a backup role, which is just great for any Eagles fans. And then obviously Cowboys are just a complete. I'm not going to say a bad word, but they're cluster what?
They caught the injury bug. Not to sort of derail from the minute here, but they caught the injury bug hard this year, and their flaws were exposed. Obviously they're going to get pieces back, but they have a very good young receiving core that will develop really well over the next couple of years. But I think it's unfair to say that the Cowboys stink because, well, obviously they do, but it's their flaws in their backup system that have been exposed and have given them I think they've got 9 losses. Yeah, they're 5-9. That's right. So yeah, it's basically their backup squad that has been sort of
See,
exposed.
I can kind of see that, but I think it's exposed a lot more. I think it's really exposed the coaching and the organizational problems that they have. Like I said this from day one. I don't know why the hell they hired Mike McCarthy as their head coach. He was basically abandoned in Green Bay because he was so boring and old, and then you bring him to like a young emerging quarterback. So that's just not going to work. Who, as much as people like him, is not Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, not to kind of stray away from what we were doing, even though it's kind of done. NFC East in general, even though it can be atrocious at times, it is going to be a very exciting division.
Very bright future for possibly all 4 teams.
Possibly, keyword possibly. But yeah, so the last game that we're going to be talking about today is the Eagles and sorry about the lights going out. The last game is the Eagles and the Cardinals. This is another game where Kyler Murray absolutely balled out, even though the Cardinals defense is not really helping at all. And yet another game, Jacob, where Jalen Hurts looks far better a quarterback than Carson Wentz.
It was announced earlier today that, and you brushed on this briefly, but I'm going to dissect it a little bit more, that if Jalen Hurts remained the starter in Philadelphia, Carson Wentz would demand a trade and want out of Philadelphia. That is big news for such a passionate fan base that Philly is. Obviously, when your number 2 overall pick from a couple years ago is disgusted with the organization and their choices, it's going to be a story. And all of that is backed with Jalen Hurts having back-to-back games where he looked great. Like, he looked really good under center, and he looks to be the guy in Philly. I don't know, the direction that Philly is going to go. Obviously, it's been 2 games, and maybe it's an overreaction to say that Jalen Hurts will be the quarterback for the next decade. But I think it cements more and more that Carson Wentz is going to be out of Philadelphia sooner than we all expected him to be.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I have a few takeaways from this game. One, I've said it before, so it's nothing new. Carson Wentz, barring injury, has played his last game as the Eagles' starting quarterback. That's just the reality. Jalen Hurts, no matter, I don't care, he's a second-round pick and he's a rookie. He's looked better than him this year. He brings the team up. He elevates confidence. There's just something about him that makes this Eagles team, even though in previous weeks they've looked atrocious, they actually look like a decent football team with Jalen Hurts under center. That's just the reality. Now, with the Rams losing somehow to the Jets, the Cardinals are not out of the NFC West title contention. That division has got even closer. I know they still have the Seahawks, but the Cardinals are now basically guaranteed pretty much the playoff spot, unless they completely just crap the bed or something, which I don't see them happening. And this is just yet another example. Kyler Murray, man, he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he's really good, and he's going to be really good for a very long time, um, which is scary. I think, especially if you're a Seahawks fan, knowing that Russell Wilson is 31, 32, and he's going to get old soon. And he's going to get old, arguably, when Kyler Murray enters his prime, and the wheels start to turn on that Cardinals offense. Um, you know, San Francisco next week, and then a huge game against the Rams the week after that. Um, the NFC West, man, it's gonna, along with the NFC East, is gonna be really interesting in a couple years. I feel like, and that's gonna be led by Kyler Murray, and his explosiveness. I mean, if you want me to run you the numbers, I will. 400 yards passing for Kyler Murray, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and doing work on the ground for 29 yards and a touchdown as well. Um, he has been the focal point of this Arizona team, and it doesn't look like there's a whole lot that can stop him.
Right.
Um, and we say that Jalen Hurts had a good game. He did. I'm not denying that. 338 yards, 3 touchdowns. But it was against a Cardinals defense that has been a little bit lackluster if you pretend that the 8 sack game against my Giants last week didn't happen. A lackluster defense, sort of all season, and I think it's easy to agree with me in that. Outside of Patrick Peterson and maybe Chandler Jones, there hasn't been a whole lot of firepower on that defensive side. So maybe they look to the draft. Maybe they use their first-round pick on a defensive specialist. But the way I see it, Arizona is going to be a very good team for a very long time, and they are, I think, a couple defensive pieces away from making that a reality.
Right. So here's kind of my final point about this game. I think the Eagles situation is a lot more simpler than people think it is. I think it's obvious that Carson Wentz is done. I think it's pretty obvious. I think it's pretty obvious that the best place for Carson Wentz to head after the season is to the Colts, where Philip Rivers is obviously not the long-term solution, and Frank Reich, the former offensive coordinator for the Eagles, is head coach. And that is when Frank Reich was offensive coordinator for the Eagles, that is when Carson Wentz had the most success as an NFL quarterback. So that whole Eagles situation, I think, is a lot simpler than people think it is. Now, on the other side for the Cardinals, Chandler Jones has been out for the majority of the season. He got hurt. I forgot what we.
Has he been hurt? Okay, that's probably
and
why.
Patrick Peterson, obviously, he's an absolute legend. He's starting to hit a point in his career where age is kind of catching up to him, and hasn't looked that great. So, and those were clearly the two best defensive players that they had. They obviously drafted Isaiah Simmons, I think 7th or 8th overall in the last draft. Yeah. And according to PFF, which take how you want with PFF, it hasn't been that great early in his career. And this is kind of a game, and I've kind of noticed this a little bit. I know Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray are probably very close, and I would imagine that Cliff Kingsbury has been pretty successful and is obviously I wouldn't call him an offensive genius, but I think he's definitely offensive minded and very good in that way. But he was still a 500 coach in college. Like, this dude is not a proven head coach yet, in my opinion, and I think it's starting to show because like the Cardinals have a pretty good offense, but they're nothing on defense. Like, he needs to take more control, and he needs to acknowledge that the game is a lot more than just scoring points. Like, Kyler Murray can't just do it all by himself. Like without Kyler Murray on the team, that team is not going anywhere. Like, that's how valuable Kyler Murray is to that team. I would like to see going to the future, and especially next season, growth in Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach. And it starts, I know it's not his particular side of the ball, that starts with addressing the issues on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah. I want to go back to Isaiah Simmons for a little bit. Um, he has sort of struggled to adjust his game to the NFL level because when he was at college, when he was at Clemson, I believe he went to Clemson. Before I continue,
Yes, he did.
Yeah, when he was at Clemson, it was okay for him to be sort of too short to be a safety or a cornerback and too sort of quick and not strong enough to be a linebacker. It was okay because he was making dynamic plays at the college level, and he won a national title, I believe, at some point. Um, Obviously, you take that to the NFL level, and it has been difficult for him to find an identity in Arizona. Obviously, they've been playing him all over the field, trying to figure out where he fits best, and like he doesn't really fit. Like, obviously, he's too sort of. I believe he's too small to be a safety, and he's too sort of elusive, and he's not sort of strong enough to be a linebacker, where I think he played a lot of snaps at Clemson. Um, so it's weird. It's a little. I'm a little hesitant to say that he struggled because he has yet to find an identity. I think once he finds an identity in Arizona, he's going to be phenomenal for them.
Yeah, I'm not.
But he needs to find a concrete place that he can
Obviously,
be.
I'm not counting out Isaiah Simmons this early. That would be ridiculous of me to do. I'm just saying there needs to be more of a focus on the defensive side of the ball in Arizona. Like, it can't just be Kyler Murray, or if it just keeps going the way it is, then I think it slowly turns into kind of like a Seattle situation where the whole entire team is focused around Russell Wilson being a human god, if you will. And I don't want to see that happen in Arizona because I love watching Kyler Murray play so much. So that's kind of my take. That is actually going to wrap up this live stream of the NFL Week 15 recap with me and Jacob. I hope you guys enjoyed it. For anyone who is listening or watching, we are going to I will be taking the audio of this recording and posting it to the HQI Sports podcast, available in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. It's all available there. And this will likely be posted Monday morning, I would say. Probably Monday morning. This will likely be posted Monday morning, I would say. Probably Monday morning. Also be sure to check out my last two episodes, both interviews, one with ESPN senior photo editor Nick Gallick, and also the one I posted yesterday with Roughing the Kicker host Tucker Franklin. All very good. I had great conversations with both people. Be sure to go listen to those. I also have another interview coming out either tomorrow or probably Tuesday. With Zach Shoemaker again, discussing the NBA season as well as basketball in general. Had great conversation there, so be sure to go follow or be sure to check out those three interviews. Had a great time doing them. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter, HQI_sports, and also go follow me on Instagram, Josh_Hobbs22. Those is where I upload more content and also information about when I upload next. And also shout out to Jacob for coming on this live stream again. You got any final words for me, Jacob?
Go Giants.
I think the game is actually kind of close. Not gonna lie.
It's 7-3, but it's 3rd and 1 from the 9 for the Browns right now. It is now 1st and 10 from the 5.
Yeah. So
go Giants. Go Colt McCoy.
Go Colt McCoy. If you guys beat the Cleveland Browns with Colt McCoy,
I will throw a party if we beat Seattle and Cleveland within 3 weeks.
Yeah. So that would be such an NFL 2020 thing to happen.
I will be the happiest man on the planet.
So yeah, root for Jacob and his Giants tonight, or whenever you're listening to this. That is going to conclude the live stream with me and Jacob. This will go on my the podcast channel on Monday, so stay tuned for that. That's going to wrap up this live stream.